Hey everyone, Pastor George here with today's Bible study recap. And today we finished up the first chapter of James and we looked at verses 19 through 27. And this section can be broken up basically into three parts. So the first part is James's call for us to listen and not speak. And the tongue forms a pretty important part of James's teachings in this book. And he uses it in different ways at different parts, or at least like he uses different ideas related to it as he goes on. And one of the things I talked about this morning was as we looked at this passage that we usually think that this is a message for us as Christians to listen to other people more, be attentive listeners, speak less, speak with more thinking about what we're going to say. And while that is true, and that's definitely something James gets to later, that's actually not necessarily what he's talking about here. And this has more to do with the way that we view speech and what we prize. Because both today and in the ancient world, there was a lot of focus on rhetoric and good speakers. So when we talked about this today, people come to the church. What are they looking for? If they join a church, they're looking for good preachers, right? And people like to speak about the Bible and talk about it. But one of the things that James is really adamant on, and you can see it pop up in this, what we read today in a big way, is not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. And so what James is talking about here is don't just speak about the Bible, right? Listen to it, understand it, and apply it to your life. That's why you'll see, right? He starts off by saying, be quick to listen, slow to speak. And then he says that the fact that this should change your life, right? Anger should be gone, right? Get rid of moral filth and evil, and accept the word that is planted in you. Right? And then he says, do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Right? This is the NIV. And so right here, he's reminding us that this isn't actually about hearing people speak or us speaking about the word, but actually just listening to what the word of God has to say and applying it in our lives. Right? That's where the second section. And he says that people who don't do this, he uses this metaphor here, which is kind of hard to understand, or at least it was for me when I first read it and started thinking about it, was where he talks about anyone who does this is like someone who looks in the mirror and then leaves and forgets what they looked like. And I didn't quite, maybe it's just the way it's phrased or whatever, I didn't quite get it. But when you look at it more deeply, you'll see what he's talking about here is the mirror for us, right, is the word. So when you look at the Bible, you know more about yourself, you know more about the world, and you know what you have to do. And then you leave and you completely forget about it. And so we talked about how this can happen, right, with Christians in our lives. So like we can we go to Bible study and then immediately just kind of put to the side what we learned and go back to our old ways, or go into church and do the same thing, right? And one of the things that James is really big here is in the law of God, right? In these commandments from Christ, in the commandments that we are given in the Old Testament, right, we have true freedom. He calls it liberty here, right? And that it gives us freedom. And it's weird to think about it that way, because we usually, when we think about commandments and laws, we don't think freedom, right? We think of rules put in place to keep us in line and to keep us from doing things that maybe we want to do, right? It doesn't seem like freedom, but James is saying in following these things, we actually do get freedom. And that is the freedom of knowing what is good and right and following that. That's what his point is. And then he moves on to 26 and 27 here. And this is going to be a consistent concern, because we're going to see this next week and throughout the book of James too, is people who will say they are such and such thing, but aren't, right? You can see that this has come up already in just these few verses that we've read today, right? And James says, listen, the religion that is acceptable to God is one that is concerned with orphans and widows in distress, and where you keep yourself by becoming stained or polluted by the world. And that is what it means to follow God, right? That's what the faith looks like. It's not just a bunch of intellectual assents and no change to your life, right? It's intellectual sense and the fact that you need to let those things change your life, right? You need to listen to the word of God, right? Believe the word of God. That's where James starts, but then you have to do it. And that's where we ended today. So I don't know. It raises interesting questions about what is freedom in the life of a Christian, and things like that, and how it's not freedom maybe the way that is popularly conceived of, but something that is actually a lot better than that. So I don't know. That's what we talked about today. You guys have a good rest of your Wednesday. I'll see you tomorrow for a new thing. Looking forward to it. And yeah, peace out.